this episode of Navigating the Waters, where we have our fabulous host, Stephanie Mckinney, who is CEO and founder of River VC. Stephanie, welcome.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you, Kim, so much for joining. So today's episode, we are going to be discussing your company, how you have done in raising, what you have done, the challenges that you have overcome, and so on. So if you don't mind, would you love to give us a 5-minute introduction and then we can dive into some questions?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So my business, which is Legacy Media, it's been an interesting journey, as I think a lot of entrepreneurs' journeys have been, haven't they? We started out doing one thing and we kind of ended up falling into doing what it is today. So a couple of years ago when I set it up, it was actually called Master Mindset, and the whole idea was to provide leadership training to other leaders on how to be more effective and more successful in leading their businesses, leading their people. But lockdown happened and things change and you have to evolve. And I started my first podcast, of which I now do 5, and I host them for other people. And I had to learn from scratch how to build the backgrounds and the banners and the intros and the outros and learn all about editing and all of those things. And then I started to find people go, could you do that for me? I was like, well, I kind of could. Yeah, it's not really what I do. It's what I do now, it turns out. Because actually, having done it for a couple of years, you've learned how to do it well, and then how to turn it into a whole piece of broadcast media. So what we now do for people is help them set up their podcasts, get all of it branded for them, and then edit them and also write additional articles for them. So it might be blog posts, it might be newsletters, it might be broadcast PR. And I'm really thrilled to be saying that next week I'm about to announce a collaboration with Zondra TV channel to actually start streaming them also across the likes of Zondra and Amazon and Apple and Roku, which is bizarre to sit here and say. I started off thinking I was going to be a leadership coach, and 3 years on, an exec producer and helping other people get their voices heard. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's the easy bit of my business. The difficult piece has been navigating setting a business up. You know, as we've been chatting the last few weeks, we've been bootstrapping it, so funding it myself. So sometimes having to go and freelance and do other work because that's going to bring in the money, and find that courage to just trust that if you're doing the right thing and you're doing what you said you would do, and you keep going and you keep having faith that the business will come, which, you know, I feel every other entrepreneur's pain in that, because sometimes that is, that's a lot of self-belief that you have to dig in and find, and that there are times when you don't know how to pay the bills that you're not sure it's a good time to continue bootstrapping and growing your business.
Exactly. That 9-to-5 job looks a little bit more appealing when you're struggling at midnight trying to get your company up and running. So with that, how's it blossomed? How has it bloomed? You know, you said that you have struggled. Has there been any sunshine that you have found?
Yeah, there's been great sunshine, and some of it, as I say, has been learning to pivot. And you talked about that as well, learning to pivot. So, you know, I was stuck for a period just going, well, no, but I want to do it this way because this is the way I thought it was. And it was like, but that's not what people are asking for. So at some point you've got to go with what your clients want, not what you want. It's like, you know, you might have this dream that it's going to be done this way, but actually if the business is coming in an alternate way. And what I've now found is that I get a lot of business that comes in through people wanting me to help them to build their brand and to be broadcast. But that then turns into coaching work where they're like, actually, they've got some other underlying challenges, or they've not quite defined their strategy as well as they would have liked it. Or very often, their systems and their processes are the things that hinder them the most, because they, you know, we all do it, don't we? We kind of set up, and we, on occasion, it's a bit sticky black plastic and string to kind of get us from A to B. And that's fine when you're small, but all of a sudden you start to grow and you're like, oh, it doesn't work quite as easily. It's not scalable at that stage. So I'm a Lean 2 practitioner. So one of the things I often do is go in and help people and say, you do realize you're just wasting either time or money or time and money with some of those processes. And actually there's a smarter way of doing it. So I think the sunshine has been actually being open to listening to your audience and adapting to that, rather than kind of, I've got this, do you want it? Which I think is where I'd found myself a little bit stuck in the early days. Was I felt the need to fully define everything, and that didn't allow me to listen. And yet the person that's buying from you wants to be listened to, understood and respected. So giving them a chance to share what their challenge is, to allow you to show how you can tailor your solution. Because I think that's one of the other things is we all like to feel a little bit unique. So, I had a client the other week, bless them, lovely, but they were like, I can solve any problem in like 5 seconds. Now, and that's not going to be exciting to people, because what you're basically saying is they should be able to solve it themselves. If it's that simple to solve, you're actually making them look a little bit stupid, and nobody wants to feel stupid. So saying, I'm able to solve problems because that's my background is one thing, but saying there's not a problem in the world I can't solve in under 5 seconds takes it from confident to arrogant. And you've just got to be careful, because people buy from people they know, like, and trust, don't they? That's like, if you're too arrogant, then that's probably not going to help you.
Exactly. So what do you think has helped you achieve your success? Because right now you do have clients, you do have that reach through your podcast, through your newsletter. What has made you, continue to do in and day out?
So I've been very fortunate. I've met amazing people along the way, like yourself, and that makes work so much easier, because people become friends, and then actually it's not like work, is it? It's just like having a chat with friends, and that's amazing. For me, one of the biggest things I had to overcome, and it sounds ridiculous, I had a 25-year career running sales teams for massive corporations, running hundreds of millions of pounds worth of revenue targets. And I couldn't ask for the business. When it came to me, I could for them, but because it was my business and I was selling myself, it was like I lost the ability to sell. So I spent the first 2 years doing loads and loads and loads of things for people for free, because I daren't ask for the money. I kind of didn't want to offend them or put them off. And it was a really slow burn, but eventually people would come back and go, surely you must need paying for this, because you're a mum. And I was like, oh, that'd be lovely. Rather than can just go in and ask. And now in the last few months, that's been my real turner. I now will say, this is what it costs to kind of work with me. Do you want to go ahead, yes or no? Whereas before, I'd almost try and do all of the work first and hope that they would want to pay at the end. Well, if you've not set the terms up right in the first place, that's not going to work for you, is it? So,
right.
And I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are in that space. It's that asking for the business, isn't it? It's that closing down the sale. And yet that might have been something like me that you've done successfully for a living for other people for years. So it's strange, the areas that you find in running your business that challenge you, because they're often the ones that you thought should come easy. And for me personally, that's what I found. And yet some of the ones that I thought would be a real challenge, I've actually found have come much easier to me.
Right, yeah, having that value in yourself and in your time and what you are doing. I mean, you could have many different revenue models, but if you don't put a value on who you are and what you're doing and what you're worth, then you're not going to have that confidence to proceed and to ask people for that money. So you found it, you have clients, you're paying clients, you're successful, you have many different podcasts and newsletters out there that you are doing. Have you started raising funding, outside funding?
So no, we're in the process of it. So we've just finalised our pitch deck, or rather, I say we've just finalised it. We finalised it probably in February, and then it got slightly put on hold purely because we're doing this new partnership deal with Sondra TV, which just has turned around so fast. So we needed to pick where our priorities were, and we're like, well, actually, that's probably going to help our pitch because it's going to give us further reach, a better audience. We can now say that we're streaming into hundreds of countries, millions of homes, Whereas without it, we say this is what we aspire to do. So it actually moves our pitch deck forward a bit. So we launch on the 18th of April officially. So we've already got it out to press, but that's when we officially launch. So the end of this month is going to be where we really start to seek investors. So actually starting to share our pitch deck and get feedback on it. We've gone to some, we've put it through some friendly investors like yourselves to just say, this is our first go. Just tell us what bits work, what bits don't work. You know, as you've been so eloquently sharing with us on this series, it's supposed to be the storyboard, isn't it, of your business? Right. It's supposed to help the person thinking of investing understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you think it's going to be successful, where the money's going to come from, and what's in it for them. And that's easier said than done. And what I found was fascinating is it had come back from different people, and everyone's got their own little style, haven't they? So I could have run myself into the ground, because I had one person who came back and went, I think it's great, but you should talk about the team at the start. And somebody else came back and said, you're talking about the team too early, put it at the end. And we were like, well, I don't know. It's like the in-out okey-cokey, where do I put the team and who's part of that? But I guess in the essence, it was saying, are the main things there? What questions does it bring up? And again, it's interesting because I do this for other people for a living. I do their pitch decks, but all of a sudden doing your own was really odd, because you kind of, it's like all the things go out of the window, isn't it? I mean, they say brain surgeons can't do their own brain surgery for a very good reason, isn't it? Just can't, you can't see it for yourself. So I could sit there and critique other people's pitch decks and say, you're not clear on your revenue, you're not telling them what's in it for them, you're not explaining what you think is your planned exit. And as you've said, there's more than one way you can exit. And you need to have a line of sight to that, or at least, even if it's you've got two potentials, which is I'd like to either be taken over, or I would like to be able to change the IPO out or something, so that actually I move from being the CEO to being the chairman. I still want to be part of it, still want to be my baby, but I don't want it to be my day-to-day anymore. When I get this really working for me, I want to be able to move on and do something else. But you've got to be clear on all of that. So it's a lot of information, isn't it, for you to get straight in your head as the entrepreneur, to then be able to articulate it in a way that the investor can understand as well.
Yeah. I think like when you have your bubble and you've been a part of your bubble for so long, inviting someone in and showing them what it is so hard, because you're like, what do you mean you don't know what that means? Or what do you mean you don't know how I'm going to get the money? Or you don't know our team? It's because it's a part of you, and it's a part of it. Everyone refers to a company as a baby, and it's true in similar ways, as you've been a part with it since day one, since that seed of an idea, and then just having it in a slide deck seems so silly, in a pitch deck, and having it in like 7 different slides with not too much words, but just enough so that a person understands, and not too much visual where they're watching a movie, but just enough so they can grasp the idea of it. It's when you're sitting there and you're writing it, and I've done this like with a couple of different startups, you're like, I don't know how to put it into words because I know it through and through. Yeah. And then having someone who doesn't have any outside opinion, just like, it's the company. It's a good idea. Just invest money in it, right? Just sit there and understand while I'm talking to you. But pitch decks are your storyboard. It's your outline. It's kind of, you want to have a good cover, so people want to open that book and understand it and read it through and through. But you also want to give your company its justice and make sure that they understand it, and they don't have. I mean, they're going to have questions. Yeah. That's definitely going to happen. But you don't want them to have, critiquing or understanding or lack of understanding. You want them to be able to say, okay, that's good, and then have like follow-up questions. So I think writing that down and having that in a pitch deck in 15 slides or so is so hard, but it's so instrumental to raising funds.
It's so true. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but there's that old adage, isn't there? I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one, because it takes a lot longer to write a short one. And yet, as you say, for a pitch deck, I've been told that sort of 15 to 17 slides is the optimum. And when you're trying to condense your entire business, your vision, your passion, your purpose, your mission, your revenue statements, the how you're going to do it, the how the competition sets apart. That's a lot of stuff to cram in, and what you can't do is do it on font 8, just so that you can actually watch it all in there, and right. You be able to read it. So it's how you pull those parts in. I think the point you made earlier is like so right, isn't it? You want people to have questions. You want them to be able, because you want them to be interested. You want them to be able to look at it and go, oh, yeah. But you don't want them to have such obvious questions that they've already opted out before they start, because it was like, why didn't you put that piece in? And you're right, you've got so much of it in your head because you've lived with it for so long, that I think one of the things I struggled with the most, and I don't know if you've got any tips you can share with us, was how to identify those gaps, because for you it's implied, because you know it so well. So you're just like, oh, yeah, that means such and such. But for the person reading it, they're like, I've got no idea what you're talking about. Or, I had a tutor once who said to me, beware rabbits out of hats. You've come up with a conclusion, but unless you leave the breadcrumbs to show me how you got there, it leaves me feeling a bit like, we've all read those books, haven't you, where you flick back as Eric's come in and you're like, who's Eric? I remember Eric being here. Yeah. You have to go back because you don't understand where he turned up in the story. Yeah. So how do we change that?
So I think getting it in front of people who you may have told the idea to, but you really want to hear their opinion, or you have a connection that you can make to someone through LinkedIn where you have no connection, they don't know what you're doing, and you can just run through and like, do you have any questions? Because getting it in front of many different eyes can be scary, but it also can be rewarding in the fact that they're going to give you some earnest feedback. They're going to tell you, I don't know what the problem is, or I don't know how you're going to make money. You're like, oh yeah, that's what I forgot, because you know it through and through, like we talked about. Like, it's your baby, you know where the freckles are, you know where his little scars are, like that's yours. So if you can just get it in front of people, show them your pitch deck, let them see it, run through your 5-minute spiel, and then have them give you some earnest feedback. I think doing some cold introductions through LinkedIn, some emails, if your friend knows someone, if your business partners know someone, and then once you get in front of people that you're actually asking for money, you know it. You can take a breath because you've done this 100 times. You've done this 20 times to different people. This is something that you're going to have the questions at the end, but you know that they're not going to be questions that you already went over, that you've already talked about. So getting in front of people is going to be instrumental in how you can present to people. And then it's just going to have a breeze when you're actually doing it for, the real pitch. So I think it's always practice it, record yourself talking about it. Like, oh no, I didn't explain that, or oh, I need to go over that maybe a little bit more in detail. Record yourself if you don't want to talk in front of people. Record yourself, watch it over again, throw that one away, watch it over again.
I love that. They say, don't they, you shouldn't practice until you get it right. You should practice until you don't get it wrong. And I guess that's kind of almost what you're saying, isn't it? Is put that out there, get people's feedback, because all of that is good feedback, and it's all good practice. Because then you get more comfortable yourself, don't you? The more you talk about it, the more you say it. When people ask the question, you're like, oh God, I know the answer to this. I'm so glad you asked that. And you mentioned it, I think it was in the last episode, or it might have been the one before, about ensuring that people are being themselves and they're bringing their passion with it, because that's also what a lot of the investors are looking for, isn't it? Is how investable is the individual as much as how investable is the idea.
Yeah, and if you can get it in front of people and do it over and over again, you're not reading it like a robot. You're reading it with passion. You're reading it with gusto. You're being able to understand what it is that you're trying to get across while the information is there, but that passion, that understanding is presenting more than the numbers and the digits that you're reading. So once you get through that, it will show the passion, because you're not worried about, oh, did I tell them what we're going to do in Q4 of 2022? It's like, no, we are going to do this in Q4 of 2022, and this is why. So I think having that in front of people will also bring out the passion, like you said.
I love it. And one of the things that I've got in my board, and I know you've mentioned in previous episodes, you're making sure that you've got your lawyer, you've got your accountant, but almost you start to build that team. And one of the things that I did, one of the first things that I did was build my advisory board. So people that I knew within my network that could come in and would be, I guess, my right-hand person against different things. So, I'd got somebody who was there from a marketing and kind of brand piece, someone from a risk and governance, somebody to do my legals, somebody to do the accounts, but that kind of trusted advisor space where they were just going to kick the tires, not just of what I was doing, but also to give the investors some confidence that said, look, I've got these skills, but I appreciate these ones you might think I'm slightly lacking in, but it's okay because I've gone and got somebody who's an expert in their field that's going to sit on the board and help us from that point of view to make sure that we've dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and we've got good knowledge of an area that maybe wasn't one of our strengths. Is that something that's useful for people to do?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When they see that teams and they say, okay, she may not have the medical background, but she does have a doctor on board who's able to give advice, who's able to understand. Same thing with the tech software. If you don't know software or coding or how to build an AI, but you have that other person, they're like, okay, even though she can't do it, she has that person that can help. And I have a question for you. What did you give your advisors? Did you give them 1% of your company? Did you give them IOU 1%? Or how did you onboard them with your idea?
So if I'm honest, I've onboarded them all with an IOU because they loved the idea. And it was a case of, look, at the moment I'm bootstrapping it, so I haven't got any money to give you. I was very fortunate. They're all people that I've worked with in the past, so they're all friends as well. They are highly respected in their field. I've been blown away actually with the quality of the board that I managed to put together. But a large part of it was they trusted me. So we think you're investable and we think the idea is good. So we'll trust that, and they know that I would stand by it and honour it. So it was like, if I give you a share now, it's a share of nothing because I haven't got anything that's worth giving. But I was really lucky, and I had a couple of people who actually wanted to do it for the experience because they'd done board roles before, but they'd not done them in a startup. So actually being able to say that they'd come in to do an advisory capacity in a startup that was seeking investment allows them to go on that investment journey that maybe they've not been on before on themselves, because they've, like me, their background's been corporate life. So it's not quite the same when you're in a big corporation with a huge swathe of people behind you versus sat on your own having to do it yourself. And like with every entrepreneur out there, you set your business up and then on day one you suddenly realise that your IT, your HR, your facilities, your payroll, you're like, oh, hold on, I didn't really think about those in that detail. I now have to know or know someone who does know about all of those things. And I guess the same is true for a lot of those board advisors, is they come in to do a specific role, but actually if they get the opportunity to learn about the rest of the journey, that helps them in their skill set too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you have an advisor, they should be in it for the passion of the project. Right. If you have a CFO or a CEO or a COO, I think they should earn 1%, at least at first, and maybe not written or contracted, or that may be one of the first documents that you get from your lawyer. But I think as an advisor, you need to be able to make that midnight phone call to that CEO or answer that CEO's phone call and understand what they're doing and give advice and be in it for the experience. So I think there's a difference between the team, because those guys, you need to make sure that you are secure and that they're going to be with you 100%. And then your advisors are going to be with you, but they're also going to be passionate about it and willing to do it. Like you said, you were so lucky that you found all these people through your 30 years of experience in the business, and now they're able to say, okay, we know you, Kim, we understand what you're doing. You may not have the revenue or the income yet, but we're going to be with you through the end. So I think that is something that is instrumental in raising and starting a business, is having those people that can help you, that can answer that phone call. without taking a percent of your company right now, because right now it's nothing.
Yeah. So that's it. And you want to be honest with them as well, don't you? And say, look, I can give it you right now, but right now it's not worth anything. It's worth what I believe it's going to be worth. And once we've got the money and we can drive it forward and what we're proving. But actually, I also want you to be passionate about the purpose and its mission and the drive of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Because for me, that's really important. We talk about our businesses being like our children, and they are. But I'm also very conscious that my business takes me away from my actual child. So I want it to be purpose driven. I want it to be value add, because if not, I'd rather spend time with her. If I wasn't feeling like I was doing something that was value add, that was making a difference, that was going to leave things better than I found them.
Exactly.
And I think that's nobody goes into their own business because they want an easy ride, do they? It's not how it plays out.
Right, exactly. I believe that 100%. And being honest with the board is definitely something that you want to, here we are, this is what we're looking at, this is our projections. And then just saying, hey, we're not there yet, or how can I help you? And then making sure that they're okay with showing us your company and letting us know where you are and the ins and out and what has been a triumph and a struggle, so we can see that. And in navigating the waters, we are going to have other companies that we're going to highlight and talk about and answer some of their questions and hear from them. And then we're going to regroup, because I really want to see their progress and see how their journey and know where they are. So that is something that Navigating the Waters is going to feature, as well as our next podcast will be about convertible notes and safes. And what they are, what they mean, when do you give them out, how do you give them out, and to whom? I think that is something that a lot of companies, a lot of founders are hesitant on, and they just hand them to the lawyers hoping that they do the justice. And I want to inform the founders on what they are, what they mean, so they have more tools in their toolbox than just handing it off to a lawyer. So I think that is something that we will highlight in the near future of our podcast.
And that would be so interesting, because I think sometimes we hear these big terms, don't we? And particularly when it is something like that is that convertible note, you panic because it is so important and we don't really know what it is. And therefore, I think sometimes we abdicate our responsibility to our lawyer rather than entrust them with it. It's kind of like, I don't really want to be involved because I don't know what it is. Whereas actually, if we can have some of that knowledge for ourselves, it doesn't mean to say we don't delegate it, but at least we don't feel that we didn't understand it. I think that would be great. And I love the idea of coming back and meeting other people who've come on as well to see, what else have they learned? What other pitfalls can they share with us that we can avoid? And also, what other triumphs can they share with us that we can hopefully replicate? So I will definitely tuning in. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my business. I really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And I would love to have you again, and maybe we could run through your pitch deck, because I know that is something that a lot of people want to see. And I am trying to host a Founders Critiquing Founders episode where you pitch, you give your 3 to 5 minutes, and then people that are in the same situation are like, okay, that's where you can see that, or what about this, or what would you do with that? So I think that would be something that, instead of hearing it from a VC or hearing it from an angel, you can hear it for someone in their own shoes and their own journey and their own process. So I think the Founders Critiquing Founders will be a great episode to have you back on.
Oh, I would love to, because I think you learn so much, and because they're in it with you, I know in their own in it, but they understand there's walking in your shoes, isn't it? That really helps you understand, as much as it's also great to get feedback from VCs and angels as well. I think it gives you that more rounded piece. And I would love to, and I look forward to the next episode.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining us. And for everyone else who's listening, please subscribe and stay tuned.